on your first solo in Bohemian, did you have the idea for the solo just from listening to what Freddie was playing during the solo section? Did the melody idea just come to you?
Yeah, I had ample opportunity because I'm sitting in the control room listening to them do it over and over again.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I said, I think we talked about solos. I don't know how the thing came up, but I said, I think Freddie said, what do you want for the solo? What do you need? And I said, I would like basically a piece of a verse. I want to be joining in and taking the story a bit further. So I want a verse pattern. And so they built that into the backing track. And yeah, I could hear it in my head. And I'm sort of, I come from a strange place. I come from a world where Mantovani and the Laughing Policeman were in the hit parade. So my melodies are not really rock melodies as such. I could just hear something very sweet and melodic, which seemed to be a continuation of what Freddie was doing, telling his story in the vocal. That might sound pretentious, or it might sound plain stupid, I don't know. But I hear always hear the solo piece as part of the vocal. It's just like the vocalist hands over to somebody momentarily who's going to continue the story and then give it back to the main raconteur, who's the vocalist.
The Deacy box. Can you tell me about that? What is that exactly?
I could probably even show it to you if we may be able to show you that. Deacy was a bit of a genius, really. He got a first class honours in electronics at Chelsea University about the time when I got my first degree and was failing my second degree, only to return 30 years later to get my doctorate. It's another story. But Deacy was very clever with electronics, and he found a piece of electronic equipment, which I think is a piece of a radio or something. Now, somebody's going to tell me I'm wrong, but it's a printed circuit board with some stuff on. And he thought, oh, that's a nice little amp. I'll hook it all up. And he found some speakers from a sort of local hi-fi thing, which was also in the skip, I think. And he put the two together, and this is it. This is the Deacy amp. It says on there, I've written on. And it just sounds like nothing else, really. It saturates in a particular way, which is almost impossible to reproduce. We've had teams of crack scientists working on this for years. There's a great guy called Nigel Knight who's just about managed it recently. But I'm going to show you Pete, who's just put this in. Here he is. He looks after all my stuff.
Hey, Pete.
All right.
Pete.
Good to meet you.
He's Rick Beato.
I'd like to take a second to talk to you about this channel. This is actually Rick Beato 2. I've had it since the beginning of my main channel, and many of you are not subscribed. As a matter of fact, 87% of the people that watch this channel regularly are not subscribed. So I encourage you to hit the subscribe button on this channel and on my main channel. This will help me get even more of my dream guests and help continue to grow both channels. Thank you.
So this is the Deacy, and it's another thing like the ambience thing. There is nothing which can reproduce this kind of sound that I have ever found. There's racks and racks of all these beautiful saturation things and compressors and phasers and whatever. Nothing sounds like this.
Okay, now what would that have been used on? Was that used on Bohemian on any tracks?
Yeah, it was used first by John himself, I think on Misfire, and he did that multi-tracking all himself. We just left him to it. And he used this amp, and I said, I can't remember what I said, but I started using it. I could make up a story, but I'm not going to. I was using it for my stuff. But I started using it on, I don't know when the first time was, but all that stuff in Good Company where I'm pretending to be a clarinet and a trumpet and a trombone. That's all the Deacy stuff. But I was using some volume pedals and wah-wah pedals for tone with that as well. But I've used it for loads of stuff, like the God Save the Queen track that I did, which is all multi-tracked. Fairy Fella's Masterstroke has lots and lots of little Firefly guitars, all in harmony and stuff. It's all this thing, because it can sound like a violin or it can sound like a trumpet, depending on where you put the mic, very much, or how hard you drive it and what pickups you got.
What does it have? Just like a 6-inch speaker in it or something?
I think it's smaller than that. I think it's 4-inch speaker probably. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, that's it. That's the original one right there.
Yeah, and there's nothing. I would use the treble booster, and sometimes, a wah-wah pedal, which I would set to a particular point to get a certain coloration rather than wahing, no actual moving, just using it as a tone control. But that was my setup, and it's very low tech, but my God, it works. And Deacy's been very kind enough to let me have it in perpetuity, because I did fall in love with it, and I used it for all kinds of stuff. Or the other thing that I love about this was, one of its great moments, I think, is the solo in Winter's Tale.
Mm-hmm.
Talking years later now, the very final album that we made when Freddie had already passed away.
Yeah.
And I had that solo in my head, and I had this little amp in my head for about a year and a half, because all kinds of stuff happened. We were in such grief after losing Freddie, we just didn't want to look at the material for a long time. And then we came back in the studio, and I hadn't let anybody touch A Winter's Tale because it was such a precious thing. Also, Mother Love, those tracks, I just thought, I don't want anyone to look at until I look at them, because I know the way they should turn out. And so I plugged this in here in Allerton, in Surrey, where I am now. And having had this kind of tune in my head for all that time, all those months and months, started playing it through this amp, and it spoke to me. It was just like the sound of the mountains in Switzerland where the song was written, the duck house where Freddie used to sit and do his writing and relaxing. And this amp has a definite magic to it. Yeah. Strangely enough, Steve Vai's just been in touch with me. Steve, one of my favorite people in the whole world. Wonderful, extraordinary musician, and the nicest guy in the world, the greatest gentleman. And he's had a guy build something very much like the Deacy, and he's got his own logo merged with mine on it. And they're going to make me one, because they say it's great. So I'm going to swap him. I'm going to do him one of ours, and we'll compare notes.